Hi, I'm Sheldon Dingwall. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi everyone, John Liebman here. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. We're coming to you on location from the 2020 NAMM show, Anaheim, California, from the Dingwall booth with none other than Mr. Sheldon Dingwall himself. Hey, Sheldon.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, it's about time that I asked you to do an interview because we've interviewed a lot of your artists over the years. I think we go all the way back to Nolly from Periphery, and we interviewed Dan Glenn and a whole big handful of others. And I thought we'd sit down and hear directly from you your story, the story of your company. Got to talk about this fanned fret thing that I think a lot of people still can't get their heads around, even though it's not as complicated as some people might think. But why don't we start from the early days? You're a musician, you're not really a bass player, but what kind of initial exposure did you have to music, and what kind of musical upbringing did you have?
Oh man, like a lot of people involved in the music industry today, you grew up in a household of music. So my father was a minister, my mother was a piano teacher, a nurse, and a choir director. My sister still is a choir director, and she essentially has a pipe organ degree, a concert pipe organ degree, and she's paid her entire family and put her kids through school on that. Talk about having side hustles.
Yeah.
You know, she would hustle every single gig there was, and she would be playing non-stop, backing people up and on piano or on organ.
This is all in Saskatoon?
It's all in Saskatoon, yeah.
First time I ever heard that word was in a Guess Who song, Running Back to Saskatoon.
Yeah, and it's also in a movie, a Bing Crosby movie. I can't remember which one right now, but you don't hear it very often.
It's Medicine Hat.
Medicine Hat, Moose Jaw, Elbow. These are all names from Saskatchewan. Yeah, we're a very parts of the body oriented part of the world.
Well, both my wife and my mother were born in Canada, but in Ontario.
Wow. Canada's a wonderful place. You know, we have a little bit of a little brother syndrome with the United States below us. But we got our own thing going on, and it's a great place to come and visit. It's a great place to grow up, lots of space. And
my in-laws are there, so I visit pretty frequently.
Cool.
And growing up in Detroit, it's not that long of a drive to Toronto. Did you know that Detroit is the only place in the United States where you have to actually travel south to get to Canada?
Exactly, yeah. And you know, man, I would love to go to Detroit right now. I think, to me, Detroit seems like a rebirth, and artists, it's hard to monetize creativity in the first place, and it takes a long time, and so artists need a long time of not having to sweat the monthly bills, so that they can develop their art. And my prediction for Detroit is that it will be the birthplace of all kinds of creativity that just explodes and takes off over the world.
That's great to hear. We do have a very rich musical heritage.
Absolutely.
Motown and the whole vibrant jazz scene even before Motown.
Yeah, design schools and all kinds of stuff, yeah.
So how did you get into the business of making basses?
It's funny, I've never considered myself an entrepreneur. I had to be told, Sheldon, you're an entrepreneur. I've just always consider myself a do-it-yourselfer, and I had one very fortunate thing happen in my life, and that was the original electric guitar manufacturer in Canada, so Canada's equivalent of Leo Fender, lived in my city. So it was always in my mind as a kid growing up that you don't have to be the size of Fender and Gibson. You could have a small shop and survive and make electric guitars. So
Excuse me, what was his name?
Glenn McDougall. He's passed away now, but his company was Fury Guitar, and he started in 1962. And so just knowing that was possible, you know, so many times you have an idea and you go, no, that'd never work, and you don't try it. But I didn't have that initial roadblock, so by the time I realized it was a really bad idea, I was way too far into it.
So what were some of the first instruments that you made? Were they basses or were they?
No, Floyd Rosebridges. And so as a
To
guitar,
me, that's a mind blower. I can't get my head around the Floyd Rose thing either. My son had one on his guitar, and I just, if Floyd Rose people are watching, it's me. I just don't get it. But for someone like you, it probably comes very naturally, right?
well, I grew up in the Eddie Van Halen age, and so that was a revolution. Kind of like the Yamaha DX7 did for synth pop music, the Floyd Rose did for kind of the hairband era in the mid '80s.
Is it not complicated to set up and to keep, or maybe it's just my lack of technical prowess?
I came up with easy ways, So for me, it was super easy. But the problem was that A, I couldn't afford one. B, they weren't available in Canada. And C, the only picture I saw was about a postage stamp size, and so I couldn't figure it out. So a friend of mine and I got together and we said, why don't we just design our own? So we did, and they were awful. They looked terrible, but they worked. And so that was the very first thing I did with guitars.
And you marketed those commercially?
No, those are just for personal use. But I got the bug, and so then I built 3 guitars, went out on the road, and realized that I was never going to get anywhere as a musician, and I didn't want to pursue it past the age of 25. So by the time I hit 24, I'm looking for an exit plan, and I'm going, man, got all these ideas for guitars. Why don't I give that a try? And so I went back home with the business plan of building 100 necks, replacement necks for Stratocasters. I had some pretty cool concepts for those necks. The parts guitar thing I was late for the party for that, but that was still kind of going on. And that was my business plan, 100 necks. That's all. That's as far as it went. Never did build 100 necks by themselves. As soon as I sold necks, people wanted bodies. As soon as I made bodies, people wanted assembled guitars. As soon as they did that, then they wanted basses. And that's where I ran into a wall. It's like, well, what do you want in a bass? Well, I want a bass with a good B string. Can you make that for me? And I'm going, I don't think so, because I don't know anything about bass. And so, once a few people ask you for something like that, at least with me, now I can't sleep. My mind is trying to figure it out. And so, the fortunate thing for me was that I didn't know anything about basses, but I did know about pianos. And to me, it was always obvious that the B string on a piano sounds wonderful. It's got all these rolling harmonics. It's got life. It's got, it's not just a thump or a thud. It's a lively tone. So that's where I looked first. I talked to piano designers and string designers and figured out real quickly that scale length is everything when it comes to the tone of a piano and the projection of a piano and the transparency of a piano to be able to work properly in a large concert hall and still be heard in every single seat with complex chords. All that's all scale length. So did some work on it, had a bass, took a Fender, put a B string on where the G string was so that I could have all the access on the headstock, and then just made a jury-rigged nut that would lift the string above the existing nut, and then I could slide it, and I could find out in real time what does scale length do to that B string.
You put the B string where the G string would normally be?
Where the G string would normally be, just because that was the furthest out tuner, and that gave me the whole headstock to experiment with.
I see.
And so, slid it to 35 and tuned it and went, yeah, it's a little better. Slid it to 36 and went, yeah, I'm hearing more of a difference. 36 and a half. Oh, wow, that made more difference than going to 36. Slid it to 37 and it just bang. That was it. It matched the E string perfectly. And I thought, now it's another roadblock. Nobody's going to want to play a 37-inch bass, so I kind of shelved the idea. But I was thinking, damn, all that work, I found the solution to make an unplayable bass, and what am I going to do? And then I opened up a Guitar Player magazine and saw a Novak's instrument, and I went, that's how you get a 37-inch scale on a bass and still be playable. But fast forward to now, what I know now is that multiscale's been around since 3000 BC. This is not a new concept. It's been used in harps and pianos for thousands of years. And so the solution has been right there. It's been hiding in plain sight. All we had to do was just apply the multi-scale concept from pianos and harps to a guitar, which came from the violin family. And it's as simple as that. It's not a new concept, it's just a new application.
Are you talking, when you say multi-scale, you're talking about the fan fret thing?
Well, there's two names for it. Multiscale is the physics of what's going on. So a longer B string, a little less longer E, tapering down to a G string. So they're all separate scales. So there's multiple scales per instrument.
Got it.
To make it work, you have to fan out the frets.
Okay, talk to me about that.
Okay, so Ralph Novak, just a brilliant guy in the 80s. Everybody was looking for the best combination of a Strat and a Les Paul. And everybody tried putting humbuckers in a Strat, and it sounded like a Strat with a humbucker. And so people would try putting single coils in a Les Paul. Sounds like a Les Paul with a single coil. Ralph was the first guy to go, it's not the pickups, it's not the woods, it's the scale length. And so he thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to divide it down the middle. I'm going to take the best part of a Les Paul, which are the fat treble strings, fat sounding treble strings, and I'm going to just put a Les Paul scale on one half of the neck. And I'll take the best part of a Stratocaster, which are the wound strings, which are tight and bright, and I'll put those frets on the bass side. That'll solve my problem. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, I'm not going to be able to bend strings. Okay, I'll just connect the outside strings. And so he took a handsaw to one of his guitars, and he cut fan frets in it. And he wasn't trying to invent anything. He just wanted a solution for himself. He built this fan fret guitar thinking, it'll never work. Took it out and played it that night, and he was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. I have to patent this. So that's what he did.
Okay. By the time I was able to get my head around the fan fret system, I mentioned Dan Glenn. I interviewed him at your booth last year at NAMM. He's got a fan fretted fretless bass.
Yes.
How in the world is that possible?
Well, if you look at your fingers,
Yeah.
and if you look at it when you pivot from your elbow, how your hand moves, it's not as difficult as you might think. And now, you want to be as precise as possible on a fretless, but the longer the scale, the bigger the window that you can be imprecise and still be imperceptibly out of tune. So it really isn't. A lot of people freak out and they go, man, fretless, that would be impossible to play. No, it's an adventure. As soon as you say it's impossible, it's impossible. But as soon as you look at it as an adventure, then it is possible. And it just becomes this journey of, okay, what can I learn? What can I learn today? How can I apply my music to that? And where's it going to take me that I'd never been before? And I'm sure Dan will tell you, he has probably it's probably inspired music in him that he never knew he had.
I mentioned Dan, I mentioned Nolly. Who are some of the other artists that have played Dingwall basses over the years?
One of the longest artists to play our basses is Lee Sklar. I met him at the very first trade show we did in 1994, and we started working together the following year, and he's been playing our basses ever since, and he has his own signature model. He's a great guy. He's very political, but if you notice with his politics, it's coming from a place of wanting the world to work better and be kinder and more loving. And so, I mean, he's got a huge heart and just a wonderful love of animals and a wonderful love of just 60s values of we can make a change and we can make the world better.
And he has his signature greeting wave that we all know.
And that came from the bass tech from Phil Collins. And so that became, Lee's a collector, and so he collects those, and he has Walmart greeters, he has photos of nuns, he has photos of Hollywood stars, he has photos of politicians.
There's a photo of me doing it, probably you too.
He's got a couple of photos of me, and for him, the reason he does that, it's not the finger of the expression, it's the expression on the person's face.
Yeah.
You'll see people who are kind of shy, people who think this is funny, people are kind of scared, it's all kinds of things.
I think he has a photo of an entire audience giving the finger.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
What about the future for Sheldon Dingwall and or Dingwall Guitars?
Well,
is that the proper name of your company?
Dingwall Guitars, yeah. Even though we make bass guitars, we started out in guitar, and you know what? Being a bass-only company is something that I'm very proud of, because bass players are the unsung heroes, and yet with their fingertips, just their fingertips, they are the ones that have the most control over the emotions of the audience. And so we're kind of this link in a chain that goes from instrument to musician to audience, and just with their fingertips, they can make an entire audience feel emotion, feel like getting up, feel like dancing, elevate their mood, and the best part about it is the feedback we get from our artists and our customers is that this is the best tool to communicate that emotion that they've ever played. We've actually had producers make a bass player, Leland, for example, had to re-record an entire album because I showed up at the studio with this new bass. The producer heard it on the last song. I went, wait a minute, okay, hang on, we got to re-record the whole thing. It sounded that much better.
That must have made you proud.
It wasn't the first time I've heard it, but yeah, I like hearing stuff like that. And the opposite of that was I overheard a conversation at breakfast today. Two bass players kind of laughing about the show they saw the night before. A very famous bass player playing like crazy, putting everything into it, and the bass face, everything. They couldn't hear a single note, and they were laughing at the absurdity of it, and also the fact that it's happened to them too. Everybody's had that experience of just giving it everything they've got, and nobody can hear them. And so that's something that we're very proud of. That our basses are very good at not doing. They're very good at being articulate and allowing our customers to be heard.
And if somebody wanted more information about Dingwall Guitars, where could they get that?
Lots of places. DingwallGuitars.com, on Facebook Dingwall Guitars. There are Dingwall owners groups where we have really cool customers, and they're very helpful. If you have questions, they love to help. It's a very friendly group, but you don't have to be worried about asking dumb questions, because they're really cool people.
Well, that's great. Well, congratulations, Sheldon, on all your success. Much luck and continued success to you. I've played the Fan Fret thing. It is very cool. You should check it out if you haven't. But it was great. Thanks so much for sitting down with us for a few minutes. And we look forward to seeing lots more great stuff from you and from Dingwall Guitars.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
All right.
Cheers.
On location at the Dingwall booth at the Summer NAMM show. First, I got to give a shout out, as I always do, to all of you who signed up this week for our online instruction at ForBassPlayersOnly.com. We're happy to have you as part of our community, learning bass online right here at ForBassPlayersOnly.com. You are watching the #1 site for exclusive one-on-one bass player interviews, and now more and more people's favorite site for learning bass online. Once again, I'm John Liebman with Sheldon Dingwall. You're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com. Let's play bass.